Well, well, well. Here we go again with another tale of cosmic stupidity that makes me question whether intelligence is actually a survival trait or just a cosmic accident. My name is Blacksmort15, and I am what you might call a situation analyst for the Galactic Security Bureau. What that really means is that I get paid to watch idiots make terrible decisions and then write very polite reports about how they managed to extinct themselves. Today's entertainment comes courtesy of the Iron Fang Syndicate, a charming collection of criminals who specialize in slavery, extortion, and general unpleasantness. They operate out of Rimshot Station, a floating garbage heap in the Outer Territories, where the only law is might makes right, and the local authorities can be bought with a decent lunch and a shiny object. Now, you might be wondering why the Galactic Security Bureau cares about some 2-bit criminal operation in the middle of nowhere. Well, normally we would not. But when said criminals decide to mess with humans, things tend to get complicated. And by complicated, I mean catastrophically, spectacularly, universe-alteringly violent. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me set the scene for you. Rimshot Station is exactly what happens when you take all the worst aspects of civilization and cram them into a rusty metal can floating in space. The air smells like industrial lubricant and despair. The lighting is designed to make everyone look like a corpse, and the local entertainment consists of watching people get beaten to death for sport. The Iron Fang Syndicate runs this delightful establishment through a combination of intimidation, violence, and the kind of casual cruelty that makes professional torturers look like friendly neighborhood babysitters. Their leader, a charming individual known as Boss Krug Bone Crusher, is a 7-foot-tall nightmare with natural armor plating and an attitude problem that could destabilize solar systems. Boss Krug and his merry band of psychopaths had built quite the little empire by preying on anyone unfortunate enough to pass through their territory. They specialized in capturing exotic species for the slave markets, with a particular fondness for beings that looked fragile and helpless. Which brings us to Dr. Amy Fletcher. Dr. Fletcher was a human xenobiologist who had made the monumentally poor decision to conduct research in the Outer Territories. Something about studying adaptive behaviors in hostile environments, or some other academic nonsense that sounded important to people with too many degrees and not enough common sense. She had been traveling aboard a small research vessel with a skeleton crew when the Iron Fang Syndicate decided to add her to their collection. The attack was swift, brutal, and completely one-sided. Her ship was disabled, her crew was killed, and Dr. Fletcher found herself the newest addition to Boss Krug's personal entertainment roster. Now, here is where get interesting. Because while the Iron Fang Syndicate thought they had captured a helpless human scientist, what they had actually done was poke a sleeping dragon with a very, very big stick. Dr. Amy Fletcher was indeed a xenobiologist. She was also a former military combat specialist, a holder of multiple martial arts championships, and someone who had spent the last 15 years studying the most dangerous predators in known space. But hey, she looked small and fragile, so obviously she must be harmless, right? The Iron Fang Syndicate's interrogation techniques were, well, let me put this delicately. They made medieval torture chambers look like day spas. Their philosophy was simple. Hurt people until they tell you what you want to know, then hurt them some more because it is fun. Dr. Fletcher had been in their custody for 3 days when I arrived at Rimshot Station on completely unrelated business. I was investigating reports of illegal weapons trafficking, which in retrospect seems almost quaint compared to what was about to unfold. I was reviewing security footage in the station's administrative center when I first saw her. The surveillance system had cameras throughout the station, including the interrogation chambers where the Iron Fang Syndicate conducted their business. Dr. Fletcher was strapped to what the locals called the persuasion chair, a delightful piece of furniture designed to cause maximum discomfort while keeping the victim conscious and responsive. She had been there for 6 hours, and the creative minds of the Iron Fang Syndicate had been working hard to extract information about human military capabilities. The interrogation team consisted of 5 of Boss Krug's finest specialists. Throckvex Payne was a master of psychological torture, who could break most beings with words alone. Gash Rend Fury specialized in physical persuasion, and had never met a bone he could not break. Slice Cut Agony was an artist with edged weapons who could cause incredible pain without inflicting fatal damage. Then there were the twins, maim, hurt, suffering, and wound, damage, torment, who worked as a team to create symphonies of anguish that could drive even the strongest minds to complete madness. These 5 individuals had broken thousands of prisoners over their illustrious careers. They were professionals who took pride in their work and had never encountered a subject they could not crack. Dr. Amy Fletcher looked at them with the kind of calm expression you might use when examining an interesting insect specimen. "So," Throckvex Payne began, his voice dripping with the kind of synthetic menace that took years to perfect, "let us discuss human military installations in the Centauri sector." "I am a xenobiologist," Dr. Fletcher replied in a tone so conversational that it could have been discussing the weather. "I study alien life forms. I do not know anything about military installations." Gash Rend Fury stepped forward, flexing claws that could tear through battle armor. "Everyone knows something, human. The question is how much pain you want to experience before you share it." Dr. Fletcher tilted her head slightly, like she was considering a particularly interesting research problem. "You know, I have studied predator behavior extensively. The use of intimidation displays to establish dominance is quite common among less evolved species." The silence that followed this statement was the kind that usually precedes either enlightenment or violence. In this case, it was definitely going to be violence. "Less evolved?" Slice Cut Agony hissed, extending his razor-sharp appendages. "Human, you are strapped to a torture device, surrounded by beings who could kill you in a dozen different ways. Perhaps you should reconsider your attitude." "Oh, I have considered it quite thoroughly," Dr. Fletcher said, and there was something in her voice that made my survival instincts start broadcasting warning signals. "I have also considered the fact that you are making a very serious mistake." Maim, Hurt, Suffering laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "And what mistake is that, little human?" Dr. Fletcher looked directly at him with eyes that seemed far too calm for someone in her situation. "You are assuming that I am helpless." That was when Wound Damage Torment decided to demonstrate just how helpless she was by striking her across the face with enough force to knock most beings unconscious. Dr. Fletcher absorbed the blow without flinching, turned her head back to face her attackers, and said 5 words that would echo through my nightmares for years to come. "Don't hit me again, please." The Iron Fang Syndicate thought this was absolutely hilarious. They laughed until their sides hurt, they slapped their knees, they wiped tears from their eyes. The idea that this tiny human female was giving them orders was the funniest thing they had heard in years. "Or what?" Throckvex Payne gasped between fits of laughter. "What will you do if we hit you again, little human?" Dr. Fletcher's expression did not change. She looked at each of them in turn, and I swear I could see her making calculations behind those calm eyes. "I will hurt you," she said simply. This triggered another round of hysterical laughter. Gash Rend Fury was laughing so hard he had to lean against the wall for support. "You will hurt us? You are tied to a chair. You have no weapons. You are one small human against 5 professional killers." "Yes," Dr. Fletcher agreed. "That does seem unfair." "Unfair to you," Slice Cut Agony howled with mirth. "No," Dr. Fletcher said, and her voice was so quiet that the laughter slowly died away. "Unfair to you." That was when Wound Damage Torment made the second biggest mistake of his rapidly shortening life. He hit her again, harder this time, putting his full strength behind a blow that should have broken her neck. Dr. Fletcher took the hit, rolled with the impact, and when her head came back up, she was smiling. It was not a nice smile. It was the kind of smile that predators wear when they realize their prey has just made a fatal error in judgment. "Thank you," she said conversationally. "I was hoping you would do that." Before anyone could ask what she meant, the restraints holding her to the chair snapped like they were made of paper. Now, I should mention that those restraints were designed to hold beings with the strength of a small spacecraft. They were made from titanium steel alloy and could theoretically restrain a rampaging Thracian battle beast. Dr. Fletcher had broken them by flexing her wrists. The 5 members of the Iron Fang Syndicate stood there for approximately 2 seconds, their minds trying to process what they had just witnessed. It was 2 seconds too long. Dr. Amy Fletcher rose from the chair like a force of nature given human form, and what happened next redefined my understanding of the phrase professionally violent. Throck Vex Payne, the psychological torture specialist, was the closest to her. He was also the first to discover that humans have this interesting ability to use their forehead as a battering ram. The impact caved in his skull and sent him flying across the room to impact the wall with enough force to leave an impression. Gashra Fury tried to bring his claws to bear, but Dr. Fletcher caught his arm and twisted it in a direction that anatomy really did not support. The sound it made was like snapping a tree branch, if tree branches could scream. Slice-cut agony attempted to stab her with his razor-sharp appendages, which turned out to be a poor life choice. Dr. Fletcher grabbed him by the throat, lifted him off the ground with one hand, and introduced his head to the ceiling with enough enthusiasm to crack both. The twins, maim, hurt, suffering, and wound damage torment, tried to coordinate their attack like the professional killers they were. Unfortunately for them, Dr. Fletcher had spent years studying pack hunting behavior and knew exactly how to counter their tactics. She grabbed Maim, Hurt, Suffering by the ankle, used him as a club to bludgeon his brother unconscious, then slammed them both into the floor hard enough to create a crater. The entire fight lasted 11 seconds. 11 seconds to reduce 5 of the most feared torturers in the Outer Territories to broken, whimpering lumps of organic matter. Dr. Fletcher stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the unconscious forms of her former captors, and calmly began checking her injuries. She had a split lip and a bruise on her cheek. That was it. Then she looked directly at the surveillance camera I was watching through, and smiled that same predatory smile. "Hello," she said conversationally. "I don't suppose you could tell me where they keep the main communications array? I need to make a phone call." And that, my friends, was when I realized that the Iron Fang Syndicate had not captured a helpless human scientist. They had captured something much, much worse. They had captured a human who was no longer pretending to be harmless. I stared at the surveillance monitor for a full 10 seconds before my brain managed to process what Dr. Fletcher had just asked. She wanted to make a phone call. After turning 5 professional killers into abstract art, she needed to call someone. This could not possibly end well. I managed through the communication system, Level 7, Section C. But listen, Dr. Fletcher, maybe we should— Thank you, she interrupted with that same terrifying politeness. And then she was gone, moving through the corridors of Rimshot Station like she owned the place. I immediately activated every surveillance camera I could access, because whatever was about to happen, it was going to be the kind of event that gets studied in military academies for the next 1,000 years. The kind of event that makes entire species reconsider their life choices. Dr. Fletcher moved through the station with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested she knew exactly where she was going, and exactly what she planned to do when she got there. The few Iron Fang Syndicate members she encountered along the way made the mistake of trying to stop her. Mistake is probably too mild a word. Catastrophic failure of judgment would be more accurate. The first group consisted of 3 enforcers who had been patrolling the corridor. They saw a small human female walking toward them, and assumed she was either lost or escaping. They were technically correct about the escaping part, but they had fundamentally misunderstood who was escaping from whom. "Hey!" shouted Bruise Make Hurt, a particularly dense example of criminal evolution. "Prisoners are not supposed to be wandering around." Dr. Fletcher paused and looked at him with the kind of clinical interest that scientists reserve for particularly fascinating specimens. "I am not a prisoner anymore." "Yes, you are," Smash Breakbones declared, flexing muscles that could punch through starship hulls. "You belong to Boss Krug now." "Actually," Dr. Fletcher said conversationally, "Boss Krug belongs to me now. He just does not know it yet." The 3 enforcers looked at each other with the kind of confusion that comes from encountering a logic system that operates outside their understanding of reality. Then they decided to solve the problem the only way they knew how, with violence. It was like watching a collision between a freight train and a butterfly, except the butterfly was made of pure kinetic energy, and the freight train was constructed from wishful thinking and poor life choices. Dr. Fletcher moved through them like they were standing still. One moment they were 3 dangerous criminals preparing to subdue an escaped prisoner. The next moment they were 3 unconscious lumps of organic matter decorating the corridor walls in aesthetically unpleasing patterns. She stepped over their bodies and continued toward the communications array without breaking stride. I was frantically trying to contact station security when the second group encountered her. This time it was 5 members of the Iron Fang Syndicate's elite strike team, individuals who had earned their reputations by doing things that made regular criminals wake up screaming. They lasted 8 seconds. 8 seconds to transform the most feared killers on Rimshot Station into modern art installations. By the time Dr. Fletcher reached level 7, word had started to spread throughout the station. The Iron Fang Syndicate was mobilizing every available thug, enforcer, and psychopath they could find. Boss Krug himself was suiting up in his personal battle armor and gathering his inner circle for what he assumed would be a routine prisoner recapture operation. Dr. Fletcher reached the communications array and began working on the equipment with the kind of casual competence that suggested she had done this before. Many times. The fact that she could operate alien technology without hesitation should have been a warning sign to anyone paying attention. "Computer," she said to the station's central AI. "I need to access long-range communications. Priority alpha clearance." "Access denied," the AI replied in its synthesized voice. "Only authorized personnel may use long-range communications." Dr. Fletcher sighed and pulled something from her pocket that made my optical organs nearly pop out of my skull. It was a small device that definitely did not belong to a civilian xenobiologist. It was the kind of device that only came from the deepest, darkest corners of human military intelligence. She plugged it into the communications array, and suddenly the AI was singing a very different tune. "Access granted, Dr. Fletcher. How may I assist you?" "Open a quantum-encrypted channel to Terran Military Command. Authorization Fletcher Omega 77 Alpha." My survival instincts were now screaming so loudly that I could barely think. Dr. Amy Fletcher was not just a former military specialist. She was something much more dangerous. She was someone who had authorization codes that could reach the highest levels of human command structure. The communication went through with the kind of efficiency that suggested the human military had been expecting this call. A voice came through the speakers that made my species' fight-or-flight responses trigger so hard that I actually fell out of my chair. "Dr. Fletcher," the voice said, and it carried the kind of authority that could start or end wars with a casual comment. "We have been monitoring your situation. Are you secure?" "Temporarily," Dr. Fletcher replied. "I need a cleanup crew at these coordinates. Full sterilization protocol." "Understood. ETA 14 minutes. Are there any civilians on station that require protection?" Dr. Fletcher paused and looked directly at the surveillance camera I was watching through. 1. Blacksmort 15 from Galactic Security. He has been observing the situation and should be extracted before cleanup begins. I felt every organ in my body simultaneously try to relocate to different positions. She knew I was watching. She had known the entire time. Confirmed. Extraction team will collect him first. Anything else? "Yes," Dr. Fletcher said, and her voice carried a note of satisfaction that made me want to hide under my desk. "Make sure the cleanup crew understands that this was a teaching moment. I want the recordings preserved for educational purposes." "Understood. Fletcher Omega 77 Alpha, you are cleared for immediate extraction. Try not to have too much fun before we arrive." Dr. Fletcher smiled that predatory smile again. "I make no promises." The communication ended, and suddenly Rimshot Station felt very small and very doomed. That was when Boss Krug Bone Crusher arrived with 47 of his finest killers, all armed to their various teeth and ready to demonstrate why the Iron Fang Syndicate was the most feared criminal organization in the outer territories. They found Dr. Fletcher standing calmly in the center of the communications chamber, her hands clasped behind her back like she was waiting for a bus. "Human!" Boss Krug roared, his voice echoing through the chamber like thunder made of pure malice. "You have caused enough trouble. Surrender now, and your death will be quick." Dr. Fletcher looked at him with the kind of polite interest that teachers show toward particularly slow students. "Boss Krug, I presume. I have been looking forward to meeting you." "Looking forward to dying, you mean?" "Actually," Dr. Fletcher said conversationally, "I was looking forward to conducting a practical demonstration of why kidnapping humans is considered a capital offense by 17 different galactic governments." Boss Krug's massive form was encased in battle armor that could withstand direct hits from military-grade weapons. His personal shields could deflect energy blasts that would vaporize small buildings. His built-in weapon systems could level city blocks. He was surrounded by 47 professional killers who had spent their entire lives perfecting the art of violence. Dr. Amy Fletcher was wearing a torn lab coat and had a split lip. The fight lasted exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds. I watched the entire thing through the security cameras, and I am still not entirely sure what I witnessed. It was not a fight so much as a physics lesson about the difference between theoretical knowledge and practical application. Dr. Fletcher moved like gravity was optional and physics was merely a suggestion. She flowed around attacks that should have been impossible to avoid, struck with precision that made surgical instruments look clumsy, and demonstrated fighting techniques that belonged in textbooks about theoretical martial arts. Boss Krug's armor, his shields, his weapons, his 47 backup killers. None of it mattered. Dr. Fletcher dismantled them with the kind of methodical efficiency that you might use to sort paperwork. By the time the human cleanup crew arrived, the communications chamber looked like a hurricane had collided with a demolition site. Boss Krug and his entire organization were unconscious, broken, or reconsidering their career choices. Dr. Fletcher was sitting on a pile of defeated criminals, calmly checking her nails for damage. The extraction team consisted of 12 humans in armor that made Boss Krug's gear look like children's toys. They moved with the kind of professional competence that suggested they had done this many times before. "Dr. Fletcher," the team leader said, "are you injured?" "Minor bruising," she replied. "Nothing that will not heal." "How long until the sterilization team arrives?" 6 minutes. We should evacuate the civilian observer first. That was when they came for me. 2 members of the extraction team appeared in the administrative center, like they had materialized out of thin air. "Blacksmort 15, one of them asked politely. "That is me," I managed. "Dr. Fletcher requested that we extract you before cleanup begins. This is for your own safety." I looked at the surveillance monitors showing the carnage in the communications chamber, then at these 2 humans who were treating mass destruction like a routine maintenance operation. "What exactly is a sterilization team?" I asked. The human's helmet retracted, revealing a face that belonged to someone who had seen too much violence and found it routine. "Educational demonstration, sir. Dr. Fletcher believes that other criminal organizations should understand the consequences of kidnapping human researchers." "And the sterilization part?" "Complete elimination of the Iron Fang Syndicate as a functional entity. Their assets will be redistributed to their victims. Their facilities will be converted to humanitarian purposes, and their leadership will be relocated to correctional facilities where they can learn to be better people." I stared at him. "You are going to reform them?" "Dr. Fletcher prefers rehabilitation to execution. She finds it more psychologically devastating for the subjects and more educationally valuable for observers." 20 minutes after Dr. Amy Fletcher had asked them not to hit her again, the Iron Fang Syndicate ceased to exist as anything more than a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating humans. The cleanup was thorough, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its efficiency. Within 2 hours, Rimshot Station had been transformed from a criminal stronghold into a humanitarian aid distribution center. Dr. Fletcher found me in the evacuation shuttle as we watched the transformation from a safe distance. "I apologize for the inconvenience," she said with the same polite tone she had used throughout the entire crisis. "I hope this has not disrupted your investigation too severely." I looked at her, this small human female who had single-handedly destroyed an entire criminal empire, and realized that everything I thought I knew about humans was wrong. "Dr. Fletcher," I said carefully, "what exactly are you?" She smiled, and for the first time, it was a genuinely warm expression instead of a predatory warning. "I am a xenobiologist," she said simply. "I study dangerous predators." "And the military training? The combat skills? The authorization codes?" "Well," Dr. Fletcher said thoughtfully, "when you spend your career studying the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, it helps to be more dangerous than they are. The shuttle carried us away from Rimshot Station as human engineering teams began converting it into something useful. In my incident report, I noted that the Iron Fang Syndicate had been dissolved due to administrative restructuring following diplomatic negotiations. I did not mention that the negotiations had consisted entirely of a human scientist asking politely not to be hit again. Some things are too terrifying to put in official reports, because sometimes the most dangerous predator in the room is the one that looks harmless. And sometimes the best way to study dangerous creatures is to be something even more dangerous. Dr. Amy Fletcher taught me that the hard way, but the education was far from over. Because when you witness the complete annihilation of a criminal empire by a single human scientist, word tends to spread through the galaxy's underworld faster than a plague outbreak. And the reactions to that word spreading? Well, that is where things got really interesting. Within 6 standard hours of the Rimshot Station incident, every major criminal organization in the Outer Territories was holding emergency meetings. The Crimson Maw Cartel, the Void Stalker Pirates, the Bone Grinder Syndicate, all of them suddenly very interested in discussing human-related policies. I know this because my job at the Galactic Security Bureau involves monitoring criminal communications. And let me tell you, eavesdropping on panicked crime lords is both educational and deeply amusing. "How is this possible?" shrieked Overlord Vex Thane Destroyer during an encrypted conference call that our analysts cracked in about 37 seconds. The Iron Fang Syndicate had the best security in the sector. They had 47 elite killers. They had military-grade equipment. And they had 1 human scientist, replied Warlord Grimskull Render from his fortress ship. 1 human who turned their entire operation into scrap metal. "It has to be some kind of mistake," insisted crime boss Riptier Shred. "Humans are weak. Everyone knows this. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced physical capabilities. They are prey animals who got lucky with technology." The silence that followed this statement was the kind that usually precedes either profound revelations or spectacular violence. In this case, it was definitely going to be revelations, because Captain Deathbringer 9 had something to add to the conversation. "I have been researching human military history," he said, in a voice that suggested he had discovered something unpleasant. Specifically, their approach to conflict resolution. "And?" Overlord Vex Thane Destroyer prompted. "They do not have a military history. They have a military obsession. These creatures have been perfecting the art of warfare for their entire evolutionary existence. They have been killing each other with increasingly creative methods for millions of years. So, many species have violent histories. Not like this," Captain Deathbringer 9 continued. "Most species develop warfare as a means to an end. Territory, resources, survival. Humans developed warfare as an art form. They study it, refine it, teach it to their children as recreational activity." There was another pause as the assembled crime lords processed this information. "You are telling me," Warlord Grimskull Render said slowly, "that humans practice violence for fun? I am telling you that humans have sports based on combat simulation. They have entertainment media focused entirely on conflict scenarios. They have academic institutions dedicated to studying military strategy. And most importantly, they have turned the protection of their researchers into a standardized military operation." That last bit of information hit the criminal conference like a fusion bomb in a kindergarten. "Standardized?" crime boss Rip Tear Shred whispered. "Dr. Amy Fletcher was not an isolated case," Captain Deathbringer 9 explained with the kind of careful precision that comes from reviewing classified intelligence reports until your optical organs bleed. "She is part of something called the Deep Space Research Initiative. Every human scientist working in hostile territories has military backup protocols." "What kind of backup protocols?" Overlord Vex Thane Destroyer asked, though his voice suggested he already suspected the answer would be unpleasant. "The kind that can sterilize entire star systems if their researchers are harmed." The criminal conference call went very quiet after that. The kind of quiet that happens when predators suddenly realize they have been stalking something higher up the food chain. But the revelations were not finished. Because while the criminal organizations were having their collective nervous breakdown, the legitimate governments were conducting their own emergency assessments of human capabilities. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss what they delicately referred to as recent developments in human defensive capabilities. What they actually meant was, how did we completely fail to notice that humans have become the most dangerous species in known space? I had the dubious honor of presenting my incident report to the full council, which meant standing in front of representatives from 347 different species and explaining how a human xenobiologist had accidentally redefined galactic power structures. "So let me understand this correctly," said High Chancellor Morph Prime Authority, his multiple eyes blinking in sequence. "Dr. Fletcher destroyed the Iron Fang Syndicate single-handedly?" "Not exactly, sir," I replied with the kind of diplomatic precision that keeps government employees from becoming unemployment statistics. "She incapacitated the leadership and neutralized their operational capacity. The actual destruction was carried out by human military specialists who responded to her distress call." "In 14 minutes?" "Yes, sir. 14 minutes from initial contact to arrival of extraction team." The council chamber erupted in what I can only describe as controlled panic. Representatives were frantically consulting with their military advisors, intelligence chiefs, and anyone else who might have insight into how humans had developed rapid response capabilities that exceeded anything in the known galaxy. "How many other researchers do they have in the field?" asked Defense Minister Claxwar Strategy. I consulted my datapad, though I already knew the answer would cause problems. According to human academic records, approximately 12,000 active researchers conducting studies in what they classify as hostile environments. 12,000? Yes, sir. All with military backup protocols similar to Dr. Fletcher's. The implications were staggering. 12,000 human researchers, scattered across the galaxy, each one a potential trigger for military response that could reshape the political landscape of entire sectors. "What exactly do these researchers study?" asked Science Coordinator Flux Knowledge Prime. "According to their published papers, they focus on adaptive behaviors in extreme environments, predator-prey dynamics in hostile ecosystems, and survival strategies for endangered species." "They are studying us," Defense Minister Clack's War Strategy said quietly. "Yes, sir. They have been studying all of us, for decades." That realization hit the council like a meteor strike. Humans had not been conducting random scientific research. They had been systematically analyzing every major species in the galaxy, mapping their behaviors, weaknesses, and tactical capabilities. Dr. Amy Fletcher was not just a xenobiologist. She was an intelligence operative who specialized in understanding dangerous predators, and every human researcher like her was gathering information that could be used for military planning on a galactic scale. "How long have they been doing this?" High Chancellor Morph Prime Authority asked. Based on their academic publication records, approximately 73 years, since shortly after first contact. 73 years of careful observation, analysis, and strategic planning. 73 years of humans pretending to be harmless academics while actually conducting the most comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation in galactic history. The meeting concluded with the unanimous passage of Resolution 4751 Emergency, which officially reclassified humans from developing species to strategic priority alpha. It also established new diplomatic protocols for interacting with human researchers, including a strict prohibition on any actions that might be interpreted as hostile. The resolution was very politely worded, but what it basically said was, "Do not mess with human scientists, because their friends have the capacity to turn your entire civilization into a smoking crater." Within 48 hours of the Rimshot Station incident, every major government and criminal organization in the galaxy had issued new directives regarding human interaction protocols. The message was consistent across all cultures and languages. Be nice to humans. Be very, very nice to humans. The Iron Fang Syndicate's former territories were redistributed to humanitarian organizations, their assets were converted to refugee assistance programs, and their surviving members were enrolled in mandatory rehabilitation courses taught by human psychological specialists. Boss Krugbone Crusher himself became a poster child for the effectiveness of human correctional philosophy. After 6 months of therapy, he started a non-profit organization dedicated to helping former criminals find meaningful employment in legitimate industries. The transformation was so complete that he actually sent Dr. Fletcher a thank you note for helping him discover his true potential as a productive member of society. Dr. Fletcher kept the note framed on her desk as a reminder that even the most dangerous predators could be reformed with the right educational approach. As for me, I got promoted to Senior Situation Analyst and assigned to monitor human research activities throughout the galaxy. It is the safest job in government service, because nobody wants to risk creating another incident that might result in unscheduled visits from human cleanup crews. Dr. Amy Fletcher taught me that the hard way.